What's up, peeps? This is Todd, and welcome back to my show. Today, I want to talk to you guys about why I do not do Airbnb arbitrage. So, for anyone that isn't aware, Airbnb arbitrage is super popular. There are a ton of influencers talking about Airbnb arbitrage right now on Instagram, on Facebook. There are courses selling like crazy about it, but I want to talk to you guys about why I do not do Airbnb arbitrage. Now, I do have 2 Airbnb units, but I own both of those units. And here's basically why I'll get into that. So let's get into the reasons why I do not do Airbnb arbitrage. So for anyone who doesn't know, Airbnb arbitrage is when you go out and you lease apartments and then you rent them back out on Airbnb. So for example, you don't lease an apartment and then live in it and then rent out a bedroom or anything like that. You go lease out several apartments in an apartment building and then you list those apartments on Airbnb, trying to rent it out for a nightly rate. This can be quite lucrative because the nightly rate that you're collecting in rent is hopefully double or sometimes even triple the rent that you're paying to the landlord. So although it can be quite lucrative and you can make a high income, there are several reasons why I personally do not do Airbnb arbitrage. The first reason is that you do not own the building, and owning the building, having that equity, that's what makes you wealthy long term. So with Airbnb arbitrage, you're putting in a lot of work of finding a unit, getting it ready for Airbnb, you're preparing it, you're making a listing, you're having professional pictures taken, and then you have the Airbnb calendar where you're getting guests to come rent your unit. So you have all of the work of having a normal Airbnb or having a rental unit, and actually a little bit more work because when it's rented out by the night, there's a lot more that is involved than if you just rent it out by the month. So you have all of that same work that's involved, but you don't have the benefit of owning the building. So in my experience, just in 4 years of being in real estate, I have realized over $500,000 just in appreciation. Now, I wouldn't see a dime of that if I was doing Airbnb arbitrage, where I didn't own the buildings, I wasn't building equity, and I had really no stake in the game other than the fact that I was renting a unit. The next reason why I do not do Airbnb arbitrage is because with that, you really have no control. So when you are a host for Airbnb, you're using their platform, but Airbnb pretty much just gets to decide everything. So there's been hosts that have been screwed over. There's been some guests that have been screwed over. I have had a great experience with Airbnb. I love the units that I have. And I have really nothing negative to say about Airbnb as a company, but you do give up control. So the reason why I do not do Airbnb arbitrage is because instead of you owning a building and deciding who's leasing it, you have 2 exterior factors that are in complete control. The first exterior factor is you're renting an apartment from a landlord. So that landlord could decide to shut you down. So for example, in the house that I own, I can pretty much do whatever I want with it. I can rent it out to roommates, I can rent it out to a family, or I could list it on Airbnb. If I was, however, instead to go out and lease a house or lease an apartment, it is up to that landlord whether or not I can have that unit on Airbnb. And even if I'm in a lease with that landlord, let's say I'm 2 months into a 12-month lease, if they're getting a lot of noise complaints about my Airbnb business, then pretty much if they wanted to, they could decide to pull the plug. Now all of a sudden, I'm stuck with this lease that I have 10 months left on, and I can't Airbnb it back out. Plus, I don't own the unit to go rent it out full-time to somebody else. The other thing, of course, is that when you rent out a building full-time, you have a little bit more say on the type of tenant that you're going to get. Now, obviously, you can't discriminate, based on race, sex, age, and nor should you. You shouldn't do that. That is bad. Let's all be fair. Let's all be equal. And that's also upholding the law. But on Airbnb, you could have no idea who's going to be leasing your unit. You don't know if they're a party animal, you don't know if they smoke. Although you can post signs about your rules and you have it bulleted out in your listing, you really have no idea what type of person is going to be renting from you that night. When you rent out a place full-time, you get a better understanding of the type of tenant you're going to be dealing with. You can look at their rental history, and if you meet them to do your screenings, you can pretty much tell right away if they're a smoker or not because they're going to smell like it. Now, the third reason that I do not do Airbnb arbitrage is you are very limited when it comes to an outbreak like the coronavirus like we're having right now. So for example, if my entire business was built on leasing out apartments and then renting them out on Airbnb for a profit, well, what happens when people stop traveling and folks aren't booking through Airbnb anymore? All of a sudden, my business gets shut down, and Airbnb as a platform right now, they're refunding guests at 100%. So anyone who's a host on Airbnb who has lost bookings due to the coronavirus, they're not recouping any of their cancellation fees. They're pretty much out all of that money. Now, in the contrast, if you own that apartment building and you're not just leasing a few units to put it on Airbnb, then you own that apartment building, you're renting to families, and regardless of an outbreak, people still have to find a place to live. So although people might not be going on vacations, although planes might be grounded and you're not traveling as much, at the end of the day, families still have to have a place to live, which is where long-term rentals come in that you're renting to a specific family in that city. There are some other reasons why I don't do Airbnb arbitrage that have to do with the way you're paid in a rental house versus Airbnb. So when I collect rental income and I own a rental property, I can depreciate that property. You can depreciate property that you own, and of course talk to your CPA. My CPA, I happen to be married to, so she does all of our taxes, and she's a lot more articulate when it comes to this than I am. But for the purpose of this video, basically, when you have a property that you own, you can take depreciation. For anyone that doesn't know what depreciation is, it's basically on paper. You can say that as you're using the house, there's maintenance, there's wear and tear, the house is going down in value. Now, the reason why I love depreciation is because really what's actually happening is your real estate is going up in value, but on paper, for tax purposes, you can say that it's going down in value. So in our small operation that we have between our 6 properties, we can take about 100 grand of depreciation, meaning the first 100 grand we make in real estate is tax free. The second thing you can do when you actually own the buildings is you can deduct the interest payments. So hopefully your tenants are paying the mortgage, taxes, insurance, and interest for you. But when you own the building, you can deduct those interest payments. So if you're paying interest to the bank, you can write that off on your taxes as well, making your tax liability just a little bit smaller. There are also a lot of benefits to collecting passive rental income as opposed to Airbnb income. Now, here's the deal. When you're renting out a room or an apartment on Airbnb, technically, yes, you do have that unit for rent, but you're actually collecting business income. So just like a hotel, technically speaking, they're renting hotel rooms out, but they're not collecting rental income in the eyes of the IRS. They're collecting business income. And there are some tax benefits when you're collecting passive rental income that you do not get with Airbnb. So basically, to wrap things up, Airbnb can be quite lucrative. Again, I do have a couple of units that I really enjoy, but I do not do Airbnb arbitrage because I don't get to take depreciation. I wouldn't get to deduct the interest off my taxes. I don't own the building, so I'm not taking advantage of the equity pay down or the appreciation over the years, which adds to your wealth. And it also limits how I can rent out the building, what I can do with those units, and just the overall options that I have in the future. So this was not to sway you one way or another. If you want to start an Airbnb business, I'm happy to talk to you guys about that too. But passive rental income, that is where it's at for me. You set it and forget it. The properties are going up in value. Your tenants are paying them off for you. And at the end of the day, that is really what you want. Well, thank you for sticking to the end of this video. If this video was helpful to you, please make sure to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm, and do not forget to subscribe. If you want to follow me on Instagram, you can check out my handle right down below. And if you want to see me doing some stupid dance moves on TikToks, my handle is @ToddJBaldwin, and that is below as well. All right, guys, I will see you in the next video. Peace.